Thanks for joining us. Today's talk focuses on three primary areas. The first is the Game of Thrones ending was last night. And so we take a look at this sort of Game of Thrones battle between Elon Musk, Tesla, Daimler, VW, and other competitors. The next thing we take a look at today is, based on this Game of Thrones process, what is the prognosis for the stock price short and long term? And what does that mean to shareholders, etc. And then sort of sandwiched in there is what I call the wonderful Tesla options that are lurking. Paolo and others, I can see you guys out there. Appreciate your joining us early in the morning on Monday. We'll typically respond to questions and comments at the end in order for those who have not seen the show to not be interrupted by our hellos. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first visit to our show, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. I know it can be challenging to get through our shows or find us, and we appreciate the effort you make to do so. Also wanted to note we greatly appreciate the support of our Patreon supporters as well as our subscribers, and we'd appreciate if you would consider joining us in that regard as well, because it definitely helps fuel our channel and its viability short and long term, and allows us to present more and better information to you. So I have to admit, the last few days as a Tesla fan insight has been rather painful. The primary reason is that, as you know, Elon came out with a statement saying that unless there's heavy cost cutting, Tesla runs out of money by the end of this year. They just raised $2.7 billion. Now, I want to go for just the facts first and then my interpretation of it. The fact is that Elon Musk did make the comment. The fact is he is the CEO of the company and has a right to do so. What I find weird about this in a Game of Thrones moniker is that why would you announce to the world that you're running out of money, and therefore you could have competitors in the Game of Thrones vernacular try to kill your company by inflicting higher costs in the short term or other methods that might cause you to go out of business. So that's kind of a theme that I picked up on what we learned about Elon's activities and the question that was introduced and sort of the beginning of our show today. And I know you guys are going to have your answer, but I actually have mine. And the answer that I've come up with is that just like Game of Thrones is about entertainment along with a great story. What's amazing, as I have learned Elon over time, I had a premonition of him a year ago, and what that premonition was is that once the Model 3 production started running nicely and everything seemed to be rolling smoothly, Elon gets bored when everything is seeming to work okay, and he needs to either introduce a new product or something else to add entertainment because he's bored. So the last time I had a bad feeling, and it happened, was when, as you recall, Elon announced that they're ready to go on the purchase of the company, and he really wasn't. It was, what did it do? The company things were going pretty well, and he all of a sudden came up with something interesting, and it added entertainment value to the entire environment. And so I'm bringing up the idea then that Elon's process is that smooth running things are not interesting. I want to be out on the edge. And if I'm out on the edge, I'll let regular management deal with the stuff that's working, and I want to be out on the edge and in the zone of entertainment. So he keeps coming up with stuff. So an example here being, they just had a $2.7 billion raise, which was successful. It suggests the marketplace is still confident in what they can do, what they have done, and how the company is moving. And then all of a sudden, Elon puts out a letter, says we're going to run out of money in 10 months if we don't cut costs. And so this brought up a lot of really weird questions like, Elon, the main person that decides how the costs are cut is you, and you also decide how many new projects like making chips or doing all these other side projects that cost money that are not generating revenue that you do, therefore influencing the overall costs of the company. You're also buying companies like Maxwell and other things that are consuming capital, both capital and frankly, executive time to execute, so costs by default. So I just thought it was wild because Elon is sitting here with, a great company in hand, great products, great relationship with customers despite not treating them great. And he's sort of broadcasting to the marketplace stuff that kills the stock because it makes you look kind of crazy if you're the one that decides which costs are added or cut. You should simply do those adds or cuts and not telegraph what's going on so that the marketplace has the impression that your organization is in doubt and therefore that organization could affect the long-term valuability of the firm. So one of the phenomenons of business is what I call the outside circle phenomenon. So as you know, this past week we did a show where we looked at VW and what was going on there. And I was kind of surprised, and I shared this previously, because I thought VW had put out these cars and what they were doing may not cause them to work in the field. And after visiting with VW and talking with their executives, I was kind of shocked because I came to a new realization. They're putting $5 billion into building their charging facilities in the United States. So I repeat, $5 billion. So that allows them to put out a fairly nice, robust structure that allows them to be competitive. And that's just in the US. We haven't talked about the rest of the world yet, in Germany in particular, in terms of what they're going to do. So I believe that this shows a commitment by VW and the other major makes, because you can imply what they're all doing, to really being successful in this space, and it's just a matter of time. And so I'm fascinated because right now we have an interesting situation happening, which is Elon is sort of entertaining himself. The company is running decently, but I just get the feeling that he is sort of playing in the schoolyard while the Game of Thrones attackers have their fangs out and are ready for the kill nearby. And so it's an interesting circumstance. So the next thing I wanted to review is, and that I think is on a positive note, is that Elon has talked about running out of money, but there's a couple of problems with Elon's analysis. Number one, he can do what's called a lease sale back. So he can go to any of the large facilities, either the Gigafactory or the factory in Fremont, and he actually could go to Wall Street and say, I'm going to sell this facility and then lease it back from you over a 30-year period. They will come up with a price, and now all that cash can be moved onto Elon's balance sheet. And from the numbers we have in mind, he could actually wipe out their debt and have $5 or $8 billion to spend on making sure the company does well while he's paying lease payments for that facility. So that's one of 50 examples of things that the company could do to raise capital. Another would be put in a dealer network and require those that are becoming dealers to pay for the vehicles as soon as they come out of the factory. And so that way he could improve his cash flow by having payments way earlier. And so these are two of 20 examples of what Elon and Tesla could do to improve what's going on with cash and therefore have no concerns about running out. Now, so the question is, okay, why is this not happening? And everything just runs smoothly. And I feel like it kind of doesn't fit the adventure sense that Elon wants to have. I think he really enjoys the theme of the battle occurred, we didn't know what was going to happen, and then, the heroine was triumphant. And you can make this happen by just you can make it happen by having some dumb things you do, and then you clean it up, and then all of a sudden you look terrific because you just succeeded where other thought that you might fail. One of the things that I learned something this weekend that I also wanted to share that I thought was interesting, which is the hardest class in business school is something called cost accounting. And the reason it's difficult is there are all these costs that are very obvious, like how much did it cost for the materials in a battery, or how much did it cost for a door, how much does it paint, very obvious costs. Let me give you an example of a list of not so obvious costs. I met someone this weekend and he said, look, I really like Teslas. I wanted to buy one. I had a Model X on reserve. I decided as I was preparing to pull the trigger and buy the car, I have all these neighbors that own Teslas, particularly the car I was going to buy. And I listened to the litany of problems they were having, and I realized, wait a second, I need to stop looking at buying this car until Tesla figures out smoothly how to fix all the problems that my neighbors are having with their car. So there's an example of a cost accounting problem. The more defects that you have in your car or headaches that you have for consumers, their neighbors who are thinking about buying the car are sitting there observing this and wondering, hey, should I purchase this car or wait till they figure it out? Well, guess what? That's called negative advertising for your company. So why not just fix all the problems to begin with and make sure you have happy customers? And that's great marketing because all their neighbors are really ready to buy after experiencing the vehicle because of a family member or neighbor, etc. So no amount of advertising or referral dollars, etc., can make up for the fact that if people are nervous about the car not working properly or being repaired properly or other elements of the customer experience, each of those customer experience results in you having to spend higher costs in the end. For example, there's been a discussion now of there being excess inventory. What if part of the inventory sitting there is there's a bunch of people who have friends and neighbors whose vehicles don't work well, and therefore they're not interested in buying for that reason. So I have to admit that this is somewhat of a truncated show today. We're actually right now just hopefully pre some good news coming out versus what we've been seeing. And I wanted to just note that we have a Game of Thrones behind the scene waiting for Tesla to screw up and attack mode going, and Elon is still having fun and experimenting in ways that the customers aren't really happy about, because we want to see him succeed. We want the company to succeed. We want to see it all go well, but some of the stuff's being introduced, I think, does not lend itself to that, and I'm concerned. And obviously the stock being down is an illustration. The market's concerned, everybody's concerned, and we all want it to do well, but these are a few things that I think are going on to be thought about. Unfortunately, today is a sort of a truncated visit. We'd love to have your comments and questions at the end of the show. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. Remember, I'm going to go do my 20 leg lifts right now. Don't eat within 2 hours of going to bed, preferably 4 hours. Terrific. Well, I also wanted to say hello to Donovan and Pear, as well as Jerry and others. Look forward to your after show comments and suggestions, because we want him to succeed, even though he seems to want to do other things in the short term that affects customer loyalty, demand, etc. Once again, this is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. Tschüss, macht's gut, au revoir, lehitraot, hoda hafez. And just a reminder, we always like to get suggestions about what has your customer experience been like with Tesla. Are there ideas you have for how other users might work with the company better? Or do you have ideas on what the company could do better that we should all note and tweet to Elon or mention to other executives? Have a wonderful day, and thanks again for joining us. Enough respect.